was a mindset rather than an actual physical presence. But I fought with this off and on. My grades began to plummet. I became more and more withdrawn, and my parents were growing increasingly concerned. So at the behest of a relative, they decided maybe I should go to church. Well, my mom started scouting out churches a little closer to home. There was a prominent Methodist church, still intact, in my hometown, which I became a member of, and oddly enough, I'm still a member of officially, even though I haven't been in there for 8 years. Well, anyway, my mom began scouting out churches. My dad was not as gung-ho about it, but he went along with it. And my mom befriended the minister at the time and went to a couple of services. Nothing became of it. Well, at the end of 7th grade, my grades improved a little bit, but not substantially. And they were worried about me going off the deep end. So in 8th grade, they made more of an effort to go to church. And anyway, my parents joined up, met a good minister there. His name is Dick Curry, who is a positive role model in my youth. As a matter of fact, was a big influence, and for a while persuaded me to become a minister, at least through his actions. And anyway, I got involved in the church youth group. I became a member of the Board of Trustees and Council of Ministries and an administrative board for about 3 years as a youth representative. And I became more and more involved. As a matter of fact, one of my best friends, who I still consider a very dear friend, probably the best friend I've ever had in my youth, in my early adult years, was Joy. Her name's Joy. And she was my youth leader and a confidant. And I became very active in that organization and in the church. And for 5 years, I was a devout member of that church youth group. So much so that I decided I'll go ahead and go to college here at Central Methodist College, which is now Central Methodist University. But one of the things I feared about leaving that group was that I would lose some of that influence, that drive to stay with Christianity, because in the back of my mind I kept thinking, what if this doesn't hold? What am I going to do? I mean, I've spent the past 5 years incorporating Jesus and so forth and Christianity into my life. And for a while it was fairly strong, at least for the first couple of months. Then I remember I was taking Religion 101, my first fall semester at Central. And for the first time in my life, I totally walked away from everything spiritual in my mind. I kept going to church, but in the back of my mind, I just shut it all off. And I felt a sense of liberation, of freedom, that has stuck with me to today. Now, I'm not saying I completely shut it down in 1990. As a matter of fact, I was involved in a couple of religious organizations while at Central. One of them was a group called Ruach. Now, Ruach is the Hebrew word for spirit wind. That's what it literally translates as. Well, the group wasn't stable. There was a lot of egos there, and it just didn't work out. But I was active with that group and a few of the people in it, and became friends with some of them. But as I went through college, I kept shutting down the spiritual side of me. And then through various life-changing events right after college, I totally renounced it. By the summer of 1996, I realized that it was not for me. I haven't prayed since 1996, genuinely. And I don't think I really, since 1993. I was just doing lip service to it. So when I hear comments like this from Fox News that atheists aren't welcome here, yeah, true, in this country, atheists aren't bludgeoned for their beliefs, but we sure are admonished for them. But that's where I'm coming from, okay? Now, I do agree that we're not required to say the pledge, and when it comes to that point in the Pledge of Allegiance, I will not say under God, okay? I have a problem with that. I've had a problem with it for years. So I will not say that. I do remember in 4th grade, my homeroom teacher, Mrs. Peevler, would not start class. Class did not start until we said the Pledge of Allegiance. But when I hear stuff like this from Fox News about, well, if you don't like this country, then leave. If you don't like the Pledge of Allegiance, you know what? If I'm going to leave the United States of America, it's going to be something for more damned important than under God, okay? So, before they go criticizing, maybe you ought to ask a few atheists why they believe or don't believe what they believe, okay? Find out what's going on. Don't just automatically shut us out and slam the door, say, well, you're not part of us, so get the hell out of here. Well, that's the kind of attitude I'm getting from this, and it pisses me off. But so I'm going to leave it right there, because if I go on much further, I'm going to say a lot more things that I probably don't want to have recorded, okay? So that's what's going on there. I'm going to save this next story for tomorrow's show. Because I'm getting a little bit of dry mouth here. So, pardon me. So that's what's going on in that regard. I believe I mentioned this on Friday, that Star Trek turned 47 years old yesterday. It was 47 years ago yesterday that Star Trek debuted on NBC. The first episode was The Man Trap. Man, 47 years. What an incredible show. And oddly enough, that was one of the shows that I watched a lot of. In case you hadn't noticed, growing up, you'll probably hear a lot of Star Trek references, especially if you're a fan of the series. You'll hear clips. I use it in a lot of my intros, a lot of my jokes on this show. But the first episode, The Man Trap, debuted on yesterday's date in 1966 on NBC. 47, by the way, is somewhat of a magical, good luck, mystical number in Star Trek. Have you noticed that? A lot of 47s displayed in the background and so forth, especially in the Next Generation series on up. Anyway, going to take a quick break, calm down a little bit, get my blood pressure under control here, and coming up in just a few moments, we'll have things you need to know as we get ready for this Monday. Also have news headlines, plus the President's weekly radio address coming up in just a moment. You, my friend, are listening to First Cup for Monday, September 9th. Oh, that got loud. September 9th, 2013.
The ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Uh-huh.
Well, I noticed dry brush where we wanted our bonfire and suggested we move it. Then Smokey Bear showed up and hugged me.
So you noticed some wildfire hazards and moved your bonfire to a safer location.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Smokey, all right. Just letting you know you did good.
Hey, guys, that was Smokey. You owe me 20.
Well, congratulations, and thanks for calling. There are many ways to prevent a wildfire. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service, Ad Council, and your state forester.
It takes 12 years to create a graduate. It takes about the same time to create a dropout. And at the end of the day, the difference between a child becoming one or the other could be you. So United Way is asking you to make a pledge. Tutor a child who needs help. Mentor a kid who needs someone on their side. Volunteer to read to children. Because when a child advances, we all advance. Be a reader, tutor or mentor. Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Take the pledge now at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
I know I can read a cookbook that'll tell me how to make a red wine reduction, but where are the cookbooks that can teach me how to cut the crusts off bologna sandwiches? Oh, maybe we can compromise on mac and cheese. Can you make that with brie? Everybody likes brie, right?
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to push your food around their plate. Call 1-888-200-4005 or visit adoptuskids.org for more information. This message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt Us Kids, and the Ad Council.
Feng Shui, forget it. Get a good decorator to make your house pretty.
Almost 3 weeks ago in Syria, more than 1,000 innocent people, including hundreds of children, were murdered in the worst chemical weapons attack of the 21st century. And the United States has presented a powerful case to the world that the Syrian government was responsible for this horrific attack on its own people. This was not only a direct attack on human dignity, it's a serious threat to our national security. There's a reason governments representing 98% of the world's people have agreed to ban the use of chemical weapons. Not only because they cause death and destruction in the most indiscriminate and inhumane way possible, but because they can also fall into the hands of terrorist groups who wish to do us harm. That's why last weekend I announced that, as Commander-in-Chief, I decided that the United States should take military action against the Syrian regime. This is not a decision I made lightly. Deciding to use military force is the most solemn decision we can make as a nation. As the leader of the world's oldest constitutional democracy, I also know that our country will be stronger if we act together, and our actions will be more effective. That's why I asked members of Congress to debate this issue and vote on authorizing the use of force. What we're not talking about is an open-ended intervention. This would not be another Iraq or Afghanistan. There would be no American boots on the ground. Any action we take would be limited, both in time and scope, designed to deter the Syrian government from gassing its own people again and degrade its ability to do so. I know that the American people are weary after a decade of war, even as the war in Iraq has ended and the war in Afghanistan is winding down. That's why we're not putting our troops in the middle of somebody else's war. But we are the United States of America. We cannot turn a blind eye to images like the ones we've seen out of Syria. Failing to respond to this outrageous attack would increase the risk that chemical weapons could be used again, that they would fall into the hands of terrorists who might use them against us, and it would send a horrible signal to other nations that there would be no consequences for their use of these weapons, all of which would pose a serious threat to our national security. That's why we can't ignore chemical weapons attacks like this one, even if they happen halfway around the world. And that's why I call on members of Congress from both parties to come together and stand up for the kind of world we want to live in, the kind of world we want to leave our children and future generations. Thank you.
Exciting and new. Come aboard. We're expecting you and love. Life's sweetest reward.
Welcome back to Studio 26 on this Monday morning, the 9th day of September 2013. As we're on the Love Boat. Can you imagine the Love Boat aboard the Starship Enterprise? Can you just see Worf doing that bartender bit? Oh, you know what I'm talking about. Those of you that grew up in the 70s and 80s, you know what I'm talking about. Well, anyway, what do you say we set course for the newsroom? And do that in just a moment. Still, we'll do what's trending today. I pulled up the wrong intro. So we'll put this one over here and finish out the theme.
Oppan Gangnam Style.
Here's what's trending on this Monday morning. And in news attack, according to an article in the New York Times, more doctors are starting to make house calls again. Here's what you do. Have the doctor arrive at your home at noon, then make them wait in your living room with old magazines until it's about 3 o'clock, okay? And then charge